The Unseen Reflection, Chapter 1, The Weight of Unspoken Years. The long drive to the Serenity Springs Wellness Retreat in Asheville, North Carolina, felt like a journey into a different life for Eleanor Vance. After months spent unraveling the complex, heart-wrenching truths of the Chronos lens and the 30th year, her mind, though sharper than ever, was weary. She needed respite, a place where the only mysteries to solve were the crossword puzzles in the morning paper. Serenity Springs lived up to its name. Nestled amidst the Blue Ridge Mountains, it was a haven of quiet luxury, lush gardens, cascading waterfalls, and a pervasive scent of pine and lavender. Eleanor, at 75, still carried herself with an elegant poise, her silver hair impeccably styled, her eyes, though now softened by age, still holding the keen spark of an inquisitive mind. She had come for rest, for rejuvenation, for a brief escape from the echoes of the past that had so profoundly shaped her recent years. Her first few days were a blur of spa treatments, gentle yoga classes, and long, meditative walks through the mountain trails. She ate nourishing, wholesome food, read by the fireplace in the Grand Lounge, and found herself, for the first time in a long while, truly unwinding. The weight of unspoken years, of hidden narratives, began to lift from her shoulders. One afternoon, as she sat on a bench overlooking a serene koi pond, sketching in her notebook, she noticed a man walking slowly along the winding path. He was tall, with a distinguished bearing, his silver hair neatly combed, his shoulders still broad. He carried himself with an air of quiet contemplation, his gaze fixed on the distant mountain peaks. Eleanor's pencil paused mid-stroke. Something about him, a familiarity, a subtle shift in the way he held his head, the precise angle of his shoulders, the deliberate, almost rhythmic swing of his arm as he walked. It was a fleeting impression, easily dismissed. Serenity Springs attracted many such figures, retired professionals, intellectuals, people seeking quiet reflection. She returned to her sketch, drawing the delicate patterns of the koi. But the man passed her again a few minutes later, closer this time, his profile briefly visible, and then a jolt, the shape of his nose, the slight curve of his lips, even in repose, the distinctive, almost imperceptible scar just above his right eyebrow, a faint line that disappeared into his hairline. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth, her breath catching in her throat. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat. It couldn't be. Not here. Not after all these years. David Sterling, her first love, the boy who had stolen her heart in the summer of 1965. During her final year at Bryn Mawr, he was a brilliant, intense young man, an aspiring astrophysicist, with eyes that held the universe and a quiet charisma that drew her in like a moth to a flame. They had spent a magical, intense summer together, filled with whispered promises, shared dreams, and the fervent belief that their love would conquer all. Then, life intervened. Parental disapproval, long distances, the demands of their burgeoning careers. He went to Caltech, she to Oxford. The letters grew shorter, the calls less frequent, until the silence became unbearable. Their youthful, passionate love, unspoken in its full depth, simply faded, dissolving into the annals of unspoken years, a beautiful, painful memory Eleanor had carefully tucked away, never to be revisited. Now, almost 60 years later, he was here, in the same quiet retreat, his hair silvered, his face lined with the passage of time, but undeniably David, her David. He walked past her bench, his gaze still distant, focused on the horizon. He glanced briefly in her direction, his eyes passing over her without a flicker of recognition. No smile, no pause, no hint that he saw anything more than another elderly guest. Eleanor's heart twisted. He didn't know her. The woman he had loved, the girl from so long ago, was a stranger to him now. To him, she was just Eleanor Vance, another retiree in a sea of unknown faces. The weight of unspoken years had transformed her, making her an unseen reflection to the one person who had once known the deepest corners of her youthful heart. The quiet respite she sought had just become a profound and potentially heartbreaking journey back in time. Chapter 2. A Name, a Glimmer. A doubt. Eleanor watched him disappear around the bend, her mind racing, a kaleidoscope of memories flashing before her eyes. The summer of 65. Long walks on the campus, studying under ancient oak trees, his hand in hers, the thrill of their first kiss under a sky blazing with stars. He was everything to her then, her intellectual equal, her emotional anchor, her future. And then he was gone, a phantom limb of her past. She felt a strange mixture of emotions. Profound longing, a bittersweet nostalgia, and a sharp pang of hurt. He didn't recognize her. Had she changed so much? Had time, like a cruel sculptor, erased every trace of the girl he once loved? Or was it simply that he wasn't looking, his mind occupied by thoughts she could only guess at? Eleanor knew his name, David Sterling. She remembered his passion for astrophysics, his quiet intensity, his deep, resonant voice. She remembered his dream of working at NASA, of reaching for the stars. She spent the rest of the day in a haze, her tranquility shattered. She saw him at dinner, across the vast dining room, a silent, almost ethereal presence. He sat alone, reading a newspaper, his movements precise, deliberate. His silver hair caught the light, gleaming like a halo. He looked well, distinguished, successful. A lifetime had passed for both of them, a lifetime he had lived without her, and she without him. The next morning, Eleanor decided she had to confirm it. A name, a simple name, that would be enough. She approached the front desk, feigning a casual curiosity. "Excuse me," she said to the receptionist. "I was just wondering, is there a Mr. Sterling staying here? David Sterling, perhaps?" The young woman smiled politely. "Yes, Miss Vance. Mr. David Sterling is in room 307. Is there something I can help you with?" "No, thank you," Eleanor replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Just checking. He looks remarkably like an old friend." The confirmation was both a relief and a new wave of apprehension. It was him, David Sterling, the boy who had loved the stars, now a man shaped by decades she knew nothing about. Over the next few days, Eleanor observed him from a distance. He followed a disciplined routine: early morning walks, quiet meals alone, hours spent reading in the library. He seemed content, but there was a certain solitude about him, a quiet detachment that resonated with her own recent years of deep, focused solitude. He was a puzzle, a ghost from her past, walking among the living. She debated approaching him. What would she say? "Hello, David. Do you remember me? Eleanor Vance, from Bryn Mawr, 1965. Would he be embarrassed, confused? Would he simply deny it? Or worse, pretend to remember out of politeness? The thought of his polite, blank stare filled her with dread, her pride, a fierce, protective shield honed by years of academic rigor, balked at the potential humiliation. But then, a glimmer of hope. During a gentle stretching class, Eleanor found herself on a mat near David. He was surprisingly flexible for his age, his movements fluid and graceful. As the instructor led them through a slow, deliberate stretch, David's gaze briefly met hers. For a fleeting second, his eyes seemed to linger, a faint question in their depths. A flicker of recognition? A ghost of a memory? Or just a polite acknowledgement of a shared space? Then he looked away, his expression returning to its usual placid calm. Eleanor sighed. It was probably nothing, a wishful thought. He still didn't recognize her. The realization was painful, a sharp sting of unacknowledged history. The unseen reflection. That was her now. A woman he once knew intimately, now utterly invisible to him. The doubt solidified, casting a long shadow over her fleeting hope. But a deeper, more insistent question emerged. Why did she care so much? What did she hope to gain from resurrecting a ghost from her past? The answer, she knew, lay not just in him, but in herself. Chapter 3. The echo of a stolen dream. The sting of David's non-recognition persisted, a dull ache beneath Eleanor's newfound tranquility. She told herself it didn't matter, that their past was long over, a youthful fantasy that had gracefully dissolved. But the rational mind was a poor match for the insistent murmur of the heart. She found herself seeking him out, subtly, almost instinctively. She would choose a seat near him in the dining hall, just close enough to hear the soft murmur of his voice if he spoke, just far enough to avoid a direct encounter. She watched him at the meditation classes, his posture straight, his eyes closed in what seemed like profound peace. She saw him reading in the library, his brow furrowed in concentration. The sane, intense focus she remembered from their university days. One afternoon, during a lecture on astronomy, a serendipitous event she couldn't ignore, David Sterling was in the audience. The lecturer spoke of distant galaxies, of the vastness of the universe, of the search for life beyond Earth. Eleanor watched David. His eyes, usually placid, now gleamed with an almost boyish enthusiasm. He asked a few sharp, insightful questions, revealing a depth of knowledge that confirmed his academic background. He was still the brilliant astrophysicist she remembered. As the lecture ended, David paused by the astronomy exhibit. A display of celestial maps and old telescopes. He ran a hand over a dusty brass telescope, a wistful smile on his lips. Eleanor felt a surge of tenderness. That same wonder, that same quiet reverence for the cosmos. It was still there. Eleanor found herself walking towards him, drawn by an invisible thread. Her heart pounded, a frantic drum in her chest. This was it. She couldn't hide forever, though a tremor ran through her. David turned, his expression polite, a faint smile on his lips. "Yes," he replied, his voice a low, resonant baritone. Exactly as she remembered. A classic. Reminds me of the ones we used to use in the university observatory. He looked at her then, his gaze calm, pleasant, but still devoid of recognition. "Are you interested in astronomy?" The question hung in the air, a cruel test. He was engaging her politely, as a stranger. The unseen reflection. Eleanor took a deep breath. Yes, I am. I used to know someone who was quite passionate about it. An astrophysicist." She hoped the subtle hint would spark something, a memory, a connection. David nodded. "A fascinating field. I spent most of my career in it, retired from NASA a few years ago." "NASA," Eleanor echoed, a profound sadness settling over her. He had achieved his dream, the dream they had shared, spoken about in hushed tones under starlit skies. and she hadn't been there to witness it. He looked at her more closely then, a flicker of something in his eyes, a slight furrow of his brow. "You seem familiar. Have we met before?" he asked, his voice gentle, contemplative. A glimmer. Eleanor's heart leaped. "Perhaps," she said, choosing her words carefully, not wanting to overwhelm him. "I was a literature student at Bryn Mawr in the mid-60s. David's eyes widened, a slow dawning of recognition spreading across his face. A spark ignited in their depths, replacing the polite detachment with a flicker of something she remembered. Intensity, a sharp, almost surprised awareness. "Bryn Mawr," he murmured, his gaze now searching her face, truly seeing her for the first time. "Eleanor? Eleanor Vance?" Eleanor's breath hitched. "Yes, David, it's me." A long moment of silence passed between them, filled with the echo of a stolen dream, a lifetime of unspoken words. His face, once placid, now held a complex mix of surprise, nostalgia, and a hint of something she couldn't quite decipher. He had finally seen her, but the question remained. What would this recognition truly bring? Would it be a bridge across the years, or a painful reminder of the chasm that had opened between them? The truth, Eleanor knew, was about to be unveiled, a delicate dance with a ghost from her past. Chapter 4: The Unspoken Bridge. The silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of 60 years. David's eyes, now alight with recognition, searched Eleanor's face, tracing the lines of age, the silver of her hair, seeking the ghost of the girl he once knew. Eleanor met his gaze, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirling within her, relief, trepidation, and an overwhelming sense of the surreal. "Eleanor," he repeated, his voice softer this time, almost a whisper of wonder. It's truly you. I can't believe it. After all these years." A genuine smile touched his lips, a warmth spreading through his eyes that Eleanor remembered, a light that had once illuminated her world. "Yes, David, it's me," she confirmed, a tear pricking at the corner of her eye. "And you haven't changed." A slight exaggeration, perhaps, but the essence of him, the quiet intensity, the intellectual spark, was undeniably there. He chuckled, a rich, low sound. "Oh, I think we both have a few more stories etched on our faces now. But your eyes, I'd know those eyes anywhere." Eleanor's heart swelled. He remembered her eyes. The detail, the intimacy of it, was a balm to the small ache of not being recognized. They spent the next hour talking, standing by the astronomy exhibit, oblivious to the other guests drifting past. They spoke of the initial shock, the sheer improbability of their meeting. Then, hesitantly, they began to catch up, tentatively stepping across the unspoken bridge of the past 6 decades. David spoke of his career at NASA, his work on satellite imaging and deep space probes, the fulfillment he found in reaching for the stars. He spoke of his passion for photography, which had led him to capture images of distant nebulae and planetary landscapes. He mentioned a brief marriage in his 30s that had ended amicably and a quiet life focused on his work. He had no children. He had come to Serenity Springs for a scientific conference that had been canceled due to a last-minute emergency, and decided to stay for the quiet retreat. Eleanor, in turn, spoke of her academic career, her decades as an English literature professor, her research into hidden histories and forgotten narratives. She briefly mentioned her recent, profound experiences with the Chronos lens and the 30th year, hinting at the depths of human stories she had uncovered. She spoke of her daughter Clara, her grandchildren, the richness of her family life. She did not mention her marriage to Arthur, which had ended many years ago, or her recent losses. Not yet. There was an unspoken gentleness in their exchange, a careful avoidance of the painful questions of why they had drifted apart, of the dreams they had once shared and then let go. The raw edges of youthful heartbreak were still there, perhaps, but softened by time and a shared understanding of life's complexities. As the afternoon sun began to dip, casting long shadows across the retreat, David looked at her, his gaze holding a profound sincerity. "Eleanor, it's truly remarkable to see you. I always wondered what became of you. You were a very important part of my life." "You too, David," Eleanor confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "You were." He suggested they have dinner together that evening. Eleanor readily agreed. The unseen reflection was gone. In its place, a bridge, tentatively forming across the vast expanse of unspoken years. The recognition had brought not pain, but a quiet, profound joy, a chance to revisit a cherished past, and perhaps to forge a new connection in the unexpected twilight of their lives. The truth, Eleanor realized, was not just about revealing secrets, but about finding echoes of ourselves in the forgotten corners of time. Chapter 5. Restitching the Tapestry. The dinner that evening was a delicate dance between past and present. They chose a quiet corner table, the soft glow of candlelight illuminating their faces, highlighting the lines etched by time. The small talk of the day, of the retreat's amenities, quickly gave way to deeper reflections. "I often wondered," David began, his voice low, "what would have happened if we had stayed in touch, if we had tried harder?" He met her gaze, a question in his eyes. Eleanor sighed. "Life intervened, David, the distances, the demands of our separate paths, and perhaps we were too young to truly understand how to fight for what we had." She felt a pang of regret, but also a quiet acceptance. It was the truth. Their love, though intense, had been fragile, untested by the harsh realities of adult life. They spoke of shared friends from Bryn Mawr, of old professors, of the campus they both remembered so fondly. They laughed at youthful indiscretions, at the earnestness of their academic pursuits. The memories flowed, a comforting river, bridging the vast chasm of years. David then spoke more openly of his marriage. "She was a wonderful woman, Martha, kind, intelligent. We built a good life together, a stable one. But there was always a piece missing, the certain spark, perhaps. She understood. We both knew, in a quiet way, that we had found companionship, not what we had as children. The kind of passion that changes you." He looked at her, a profound honesty in his eyes. "You changed me, Eleanor. You opened my mind, my heart, to possibilities I hadn't considered." Eleanor felt a warmth spread through her. "You too, David. You taught me to look beyond the printed page, to see the universe in a grain of sand. You showed me the magic in logic, the poetry in numbers." She then, with a newfound courage, spoke of her marriage to Arthur. "He was a good man, a fine academic. We shared a life of intellectual pursuit, but it wasn't the kind of deep, consuming love I had once imagined. It was a partnership, a respectful companionship. We grew apart, gradually, amicably, and then he passed away some years ago." She spoke of the quiet solitude that followed, of her decision to retire, of the unforeseen journey of uncovering hidden histories. They spoke of their shared love for learning, for discovery. David, despite his astrophysics career, still held a deep appreciation for literature, for the humanities. Eleanor, in turn, found herself fascinated by his explanations of quantum mechanics and black holes, concepts that had once seemed alien, but now, through his passionate descriptions, felt profoundly poetic. As the evening deepened, a comfortable familiarity settled between them. The awkwardness of the first meeting had dissipated, replaced by a sense of quiet understanding. Of two souls reconnecting after a lifetime. It wasn't about rekindling a youthful romance, not yet, perhaps never in the same way. It was about restitching a tapestry that had been unraveled by time, finding the lost threads and weaving them back into a new, richer pattern. David walked her back to her room, the moon high in the sky, casting silver light over the silent retreat. At her door, he paused. "Eleanor," he said, his voice soft, "I'm so glad I found you. Or rather, that you found me. This is a gift I never expected." "Me too, David," Eleanor replied, her heart full. "A gift indeed." He reached out, taking her hand gently. His touch was warm, familiar, yet new. A spark, a ghost of a memory, passed between them. The unseen reflection was gone. In its place, a profound connection, a shared history, and the quiet promise of a newly restitched tapestry waiting to be completed. The truth of their unexpected reunion was unfolding, a testament to the enduring echoes of first love, even across the vast, silent expanse of time. Chapter 6. The unfolding chapters. The remaining days at Serenity Springs unfolded like a cherished, rediscovered novel. Eleanor and David spent almost every waking hour together. They took long walks through the vibrant autumn foliage of the Blue Ridge Mountains, discussing everything from the mysteries of the universe to the nuances of poetry. They shared meals, their conversations flowing effortlessly, punctuated by laughter and comfortable silences. Eleanor found herself telling David about the Chronos lens, about Evelyn Croft Hayes, and about the devastating child swap at Lakeside General. She spoke of the profound experience of unraveling those hidden histories, of bringing truth to light, of finding peace for restless souls. David listened with rapt attention, his brilliant mind absorbing every detail, offering insights from a scientific perspective, yet always with deep empathy. "It sounds like you've been on quite a journey, Eleanor," he said one afternoon as they sat by the koi pond. "Not just as a scholar, but as a human being. You've brought so much light to hidden darkness." "And you, David," Eleanor replied, "have spent your life reaching for the stars, both of us in our own ways, searching for understanding, for connection." He spoke more of his life at NASA, the incredible breakthroughs, the frustrations, the quiet joy of discovery. He showed her constellations in the night sky, pointing out distant galaxies, his voice filled with the same boyish wonder she remembered. He was still the man who saw the universe in everything. There was a comfortable intimacy that developed between them, not rushed or forced, but a natural rekindling of a deep, intellectual, and emotional connection. The youthful passion had matured into a profound companionship, built on shared history, mutual respect, and a quiet, undeniable affection. They were two seasoned souls, each carrying the weight of their own lives, finding solace and joy in the other's presence. They talked about the pain of their separation, not with blame, but with understanding. "Perhaps," David mused, "we both had to live our own lives, achieve our own dreams, before we could truly appreciate what we had or what we could have again." Eleanor nodded. "Perhaps we needed the years, the experiences, to become the people we are today, to truly see each other not as idealized youthful versions, but as the complex, rich individuals we've become. As their time at Serenity Springs drew to a close, a new question arose, unspoken for days, but present in every lingering glance, every shared smile. What now? Would this reconnection, this unexpected gift, simply fade away again, another cherished memory in a long life? One evening, after dinner, as they lingered over herbal tea in the lounge, David took her hand. "Eleanor," he began, his voice soft, "I don't want to lose you again. Not now. Not after finding you." Eleanor's heart fluttered. "Me neither, David. I have a home in Arizona," he continued, "near the observatories, but I travel a lot, and I still enjoy my research, my writing. Perhaps we could find a way to make this work, to continue this wonderful, improbable chapter." Eleanor smiled, a genuine, joyful smile that reached her eyes. "I have Pinecroft," she said, "and my family in Vermont, but I too love to travel, and I have so much more to write. I think we could." The promise hung in the air, a delicate yet profound new beginning. It wasn't a whirlwind romance of youth, but a quiet, mature understanding, a choice to embrace a rediscovered connection. They were two people, brought together by chance, their paths diverging for decades, now finding their way back to each other in the quiet twilight of their lives. The unseen reflection was gone forever. In its place, a clear, beautiful image of a shared future, built on the foundations of a cherished past and the courage to open their hearts once more. The unfolding chapters of their lives, once separate narratives, were now gently, gracefully beginning to intertwine, guided by the enduring echo of a first love that had found its way home. Chapter 7. The Unseen Threads of Time. The serendipitous reunion at Serenity Springs marked the beginning of a profound new chapter for Eleanor and David. Their lives, once so distinctly separate, began to gracefully intertwine, not as a merger, but as a harmonious counterpoint. They established a rhythm of shared time. David would travel to Pinecroft, spending weeks immersed in the quiet beauty of the Catskills, assisting Eleanor with her research, offering scientific perspectives on her historical dilemmas, and simply enjoying the serenity. He found a profound peace in the old cottage, a contrast to the high-stakes world of astrophysics. He delighted in Eleanor's stories, her keen observations, and the warmth of her family, particularly her daughter Clara and her grandchildren. Eleanor, in turn, would visit David in Arizona. She discovered the stark, breathtaking beauty of the desert, the vast, star-filled skies that had so captivated David throughout his life. She visited the observatories, marveled at the immense telescopes, and found a new appreciation for the cosmic ballet he had dedicated his life to studying. David, in his element, would explain the universe to her, his voice imbued with a passion that was infectious. Their conversations ranged from the mundane details of daily life to the deepest philosophical questions. They discussed aging, memory, the passage of time, and the enduring search for meaning. They found that their distinct academic backgrounds, literature and astrophysics, offered rich, complementary perspectives on the human condition. Eleanor brought the poetry of the human narrative, David the grand, elegant logic of the cosmos. They addressed the why of their past separation, not with bitterness, but with a gentle understanding. "We were too young to truly understand the depth of what we felt," Eleanor once mused, "and too focused on forging our individual paths. Life pulled us in different directions, and we led it. Perhaps we needed those separate journeys to fully appreciate the unexpected gift of finding each other again. David agreed. I learned so much, built so much, but there was always that quiet void, a sense of an unspoken story. You filled that, Eleanor. You always have. Their love, now mature and wise, was less about fiery passion and more about profound companionship, mutual respect, and deep, quiet affection. They held hands on walks, shared knowing glances across a room, found comfort in the simple presence of the other. It was a love woven with unseen threads of time, connecting their past, present, and a shared future. Eleanor's book, The 30th Year, was published to critical acclaim, touching many lives with its powerful narrative of identity and resilience. David, proud of her work, attended her book signings and lectures, a steadfast, supportive presence. He even began to contribute scientific insights to her next project, a book about the nature of memory and time, inspired by the Chronos lens and their own improbable reunion. They explored new passions together. Eleanor, under David's gentle guidance, learned the basics of astrophotography, capturing stunning images of the night sky from Pinecroft. David, in turn, found himself drawn to poetry again, rediscovering the beauty of language through Eleanor's literary lens. The unseen reflection had completely vanished. Eleanor was not just seen, but truly recognized, cherished, and loved for the woman she had become, shaped by the joys and sorrows of a long life. David, too, found a deeper reflection of himself in Eleanor, a mirror of their shared intellectual curiosity and a quiet longing that had always remained. Their reunion, born of chance at a wellness retreat, became a testament to the enduring power of first love, the unexpected gifts of serendipity, and the unseen threads that weave through time, connecting souls across decades. Eleanor Vance, the woman who sought solace and found a profound rediscovery, knew with quiet certainty that her journey was far from over. The chapters of her life, once filled with unspoken questions, were now rich with a rediscovered love, a deeper understanding of human connection, and the beautiful, complex tapestry of a life truly lived.